Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about the Institutional Evaluation Program, or IEP as we call it. My name is Cecilia Biaggi, and I am Policy and Project Officer at the European University Association in Brussels. Here I work on quality assurance, and so I am in charge of the Institutional Evaluation Program with my colleagues Maria Kelo and Tanya Durt. Today's webinar will be an opportunity for you to learn more about the institutional evaluation program from the people who manage this program on a daily basis, but also from our experienced experts that run the evaluations and from a couple of recently evaluated institutions. Before I give the floor to our first speaker, I would like to briefly explain the functions of the platform that we are using so you know how you can interact with us. There are three ways to use the platform. The chat, where you can greet each other, and you can already start doing so. You can let us know who you are and where you're from. But also, in case you experience any technical issue, please let us know it through the chat. Then there is the Q&A box. If you have any questions for our speakers, you can put it in the Q&A box. And please note that there is time reserved for a Q&A at the end of this webinar. And finally, we have a post-event survey that I'd like to kindly ask you to fill in because it will help us improve our future events. So thank you for your attention. We can now start. And it is my pleasure to introduce Luc Hittinger, who is currently a member of the IEP Steering Committee, the body which oversees my and my colleagues' work. And he will soon be the chair of the Steering Committee. So, Luca, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia, and thank you all of us, to join us, for that webinar. So I will present myself shortly, and then I will present my experience with the IEP program. Next slide, please. So in brief, actually, I'm a medical doctor since 1984. Then I had an experience in research as an instructor and director in research in the INSTERM Institute. Then I became a full professor in cardiology of my university, and 10 years later, actually, I became vice-rector in research in my university. And 6 years later, I became the rector of my university. And 4 years later, I was the representative of the French Rector Conference in Brussels for 3 years. And that's actually at that time point that I become an IEP member since 2017. And recently, I became a member of the steering committee. So let me explain to you how I discovered actually the IEP program. Next slide, please. So indeed, once I was elected as a rector of my university, I had two goals. The first one was to determine whether the university that I was in charge of, was fulfilled the criteria of the European standards. And the second was, since my team manager was quite new, to train them to respond to European calls. For this reason, actually, I discovered IEP board, and I asked them, to review the university. And I would like to say that, this review ran well. I met highly qualified experts, and I learned more about my university and, more important, on its potential. And for that, the management team was able to respond to national and European calls, and it helped really me, to direct my university. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. And actually, what I should say is that in all the evaluation that we did, it's maybe one slide back. Yes, that's correct. And so, as I tell you, I became a IEP member in 2017, And so you have here the list of the different university that I evaluate with a really very nice expert team. So you must see that, I mean, I went first to Czech Republic, then in Montenegro, and then twice I went to Romania, where actually I did the last evaluation last year. I will say that with the evaluation team, each time we try to help the institution to reach their goals, and maybe more importantly is to improve the vision of their future. And the way that we handle that is that we do like critical friends, looking at their past, present, and future. So I must say that in all the evaluation, we made very kind people. And in most cases, and it's very important, the self-evaluation report met our expectation. And that's very important in order, I mean, to prepare the on-site visit. And I must say that, I mean, for the different kind of university that I evaluate, I mean, all of them on-site run well. Actually, I must say that, and you will have some intervention later on of the GT Grigore University in Iași. I mean, to say that most of the recognition were very appreciated by the rector and the management team. And I will say that the evaluation teams was always thankful for their work. With time, I saw several universities ask for a follow-up evaluation or for a new initial evaluation focused either on internationalization or research. For a personal point of view, I must say that I did this evaluation in the IEP program, being an evaluator, helped me to understand better the organization, but also the question raised by the higher education area at the European level. So, and to be short, I must say that IEP, as you know, is a voluntary institutional evaluation program that will help you for different things. First, you will learn more about your university and its potential. You will make most of your management team, and I think it's really important, especially when you just became a new rector. You will find successful meet with new challenges in higher education and develop new strategy to reach European standards. And finally, I must say also that IEP evaluation will also help you to get national accreditation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Luc, for your intervention and for sharing with us your very interesting experience. Now I would like to give the floor to Gregory Clark, who has been a member of the IEP pool for over 10 years. Gregory is a team coordinator, and he's going to tell us more about how team work and what a team needs during an evaluation. So, Gregory, you have the floor.
Good morning. My name is Gregory Clark. I have been working with IEP as a team coordinator for 10 years now, and I've done somewhere around 10 IEP evaluations. I've also worked for 25 years for the UK's National Higher Education Quality Agency, the QAA. And my day job was with the University of Salford, which is near Manchester in the UK. To understand how IEP evaluators work, it's perhaps best to start at the end. The aim of the evaluation team, the team itself, is to produce an evaluative published report to assist the institution in its development. So right from the very beginning, the team's focus isn't on how it might do that. And the main information the team uses is obviously what it reads and what it hears, the discussions it has with various levels in the institution. The most important initial document is the institution's self-evaluation report, which is accompanied by supporting documentation, so appendices to the report to explain the report in more depth. It's an interesting thing that sometimes describing what you do at work and what your institution does, even though that's what you do for a living, is quite difficult. And often the temptation is to fall back on narrative of description. But the important thing of a self-evaluation report is it should also be self-reflective and analytical, as well as informative and descriptive. And the way in which the institution can do that with some confidence is that the IEP process is indeed evaluative, it's not inspectorial. The supporting documentation isn't as forbidding as it sounds, because the team particularly welcomes existing documentation, not only for the information or the processes it contains, but also because it shows how the institution actually works. It's not something that's been made up for the occasion. Nevertheless, the team may be interested in areas which aren't quite covered by the documentation, so there may be some requests for additional documentation from the team at two stages. One is before the initial online meetings with the institution, and the other is before the actual site visit later on in the process. So as a team, we prepare by internal virtual meetings to discuss the self-evaluation report and the supporting documentation. And the team, working together, pools its ideas and tries to identify areas which may be of significant focus or may need clarification. So the self-evaluation report itself may contain areas that the institution wishes significant focus on, and the team may well go along with those. It may identify other areas. Clarification is that even if the self-evaluation report is comprehensive, sometimes there are matters missing that the team would like to find out more about. However, one important part of the process is that when the team has an initial discussion with the rector's input on what might be significant for the institution is particularly important. So the team has a process of internal discussion and moderation, so that no one member's views sort of rule the rest. They pool their knowledge and expertise, and they decide the best way in which the initial online meetings might be held. So in preparation, the various members of the team will discuss how the online meetings will be approached. Those meetings are then held. They tend to be pretty much set piece meetings of a particular sort, as outlined in the process which you will have seen. And as a team working document, so not available to the institution, an interim report, as it's called within the IEP process, is produced. This is the team's provisional findings or the team's identification of areas which need further explanation, focus, clarification, or indeed gaps in their own understanding of what the institution is actually about. So again, by a series of virtual meetings, the team will discuss its provisional views and decide how best to use the site visit, the second part of the process, when the team actually attends the institution, and will, as in all the process, decide within the team who will lead on what, which areas will be discovered, or even which areas the team feels it's already learnt enough about. The team's approach is always collegial, not just within the team, where there is collegiality and reflection and sharing of ideas, but also in its approach to colleagues within the institution. The best evaluations really take place when there is a collegial discussion and both the team and the institution are pooling ideas, discussing how issues have been addressed in the past and how they might be addressed in the future. And again, this is all guided by how the final report might assist the institution. And indeed, right at the end of the actual visit, when the team has prepared an oral presentation of its findings and recommendations, there is a stage where that's discussed with the rector so that that oral presentation can be of best benefit to the institution. Again, the team's approach is always sensitive. It's sensitive to the national context in which the institution works and the institution's own stage of development. And I was asked to think about particular examples from my 10 or so evaluations of how that might be applied in detail. So I thought of 4 particular circumstances where a team had to show itself to have a level of understanding of where the institution was. I can certainly think of one, the first one, which was where the country in which the institution visited was located was undergoing a national stratification exercise. So the ministry of that state was deciding whether an institution was research only or research and teaching or just teaching. So the team had to have some understanding of that national process, but also of how the institution was approaching, how the institution was reacting to that national process. The second example I can think of is where the team's visit happened to coincide with a change of rector, and that wasn't just the change of an individual post holder, but the rector, the successful rector, was elected, and so had to propose a strategic platform or manifesto to the institution, which wasn't necessarily the approach described previously in the self-evaluation report. So the team had, in a way, to not exactly abandon its original work, but reflect on its original work and on the potential change of a direction which would follow the rector implementing his or her own manifesto or programme over the next 4 to 5 years. The third example I'd give of a team showing sensitivity is where an institution had a very strong desire to change strategic direction with an all-consuming particular focus. It wanted to gain research accreditation. So the team was able to assist the university in that context, but also really as a safeguard, draw to the institution's attention the implications that would have for the residual or the rest of the university. That it wasn't just about getting past the winning post, you then had to think of the next 3 to 4 years and the impact any change in status would have on existing operations. And the fourth example I'd give, and this has occurred more than once, is where the national context was quite restrictive and there was strong state intervention on what a university might and might not do. So the institution felt it was slightly restricted or prohibited from doing things. And I would say that the team suggested in that context alternative approaches, still within the boundaries of any national legislation, of course, which the institution might want to adopt. So there's always a sensitivity to the changing higher education landscape and changes facing the institution. Indeed, quite often, IEP operates when the institution is anyway thinking of a revised strategic plan or a change in strategic direction. So the team outputs at the various stages are drafted by the team coordinator, but they reflect a team consensus. It is about what is accepted by the whole team. So after the online meetings, as an internal document only for the team to work on, there's an interim report. And after the second part of the process, the site visit, There's an oral presentation, sort of headline presentation to the institution, including recommendations and not just findings. And that will then be followed by the detailed explanation of an evaluative report, again with those recommendations.
Thank you very much, Gregory. Now we are going to hear the point of view of two recently evaluated institutions. So please play the first video. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Andreea and I'm thrilled to share with you today my university's experience with the IEP. As an international relations officer working at a medical university for the last 10 years, I have witnessed firsthand the benefits that this program has brought to our institution. Since our first institutional evaluation, which took place in 2012, served as a reforming tool, the university decided to maintain the EUA evaluation status, as it both reflects recognition by this prestigious international body and provides actionable guidance for the university's endeavors. My personal experience with the IEP came later in 2016, when we underwent a follow-up evaluation in which I was involved for the first time as a member of the self-evaluation team. Since our time together is limited, I am only going to talk about our most recent one. In 2022, given the growingly diversified community of international students who choose our university as their alma mater, we decided to undergo a focused evaluation on internationalization. We are currently in the process of refining our internationalization strategy, and we strongly believe that this independent peer-based evaluation and the resulting recommendations provided by the IEP team have really helped us develop a strong basis. Following the IEP evaluation, one of the key recommendations was to invest in the international office in order to support the implementation of this future strategy. And to address this, the university made the decision to create a dedicated international relations department, which now serves as a hub for all international relations activities. I am honored to have been appointed to lead this department in August 2022. Another recommendation from the IEP team was to develop and focus on special strategic partnerships. We took this recommendation to heart and we focused many of our international cooperation efforts on one of our most valued partners, and as a result, we were able to develop joint programs for our students, for our PhD students and young researchers in a matter of months. Last but not least, the IEP team believed that establishing a connection with EURACSES will help us become a more active participant in the European research landscape. We acted on this recommendation and became a local point of EURACSES. We are now excited about the opportunities that this connection will bring. Before I conclude my remarks, I would like to express my excitement about sharing this platform with Professor Hittinger. I had the pleasure of meeting him during the TU visit in which he headed the IEP team. We were truly impressed by the level of professionalism and expertise demonstrated by his team. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, I am unable to discuss all the positive changes currently taking place at our institution. However, by sharing some of the major recommendations that we have implemented, I hope to have conveyed not only our commitment and capacity for change, but also the value of the IEP program. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. So you just listened to a message from Andreea Dobrea, who is head of international relations department at the University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Iași, that was evaluated by IEP last year. Unfortunately, Andreea couldn't be with us today, so she very kindly agreed to send us a message, a video message. And I have to say, it's always very rewarding for us to hear that institutions have really benefited from our service, and I'm sure that Luke was very happy to hear that they still remember him and that they really appreciated his commitment to the evaluation. Personally, I would like to hear more from evaluated institutions about their experience. So I would like to give the floor to the rector of Brno University of Technology in the Czech Republic, Professor Ladislav Janíček. I have to say that was a very, very good evaluation that we ran a few months ago, and I had the pleasure, the honor to assist, to observe this evaluation. So I'm really looking forward to your intervention, Ladislav. So I'm happy to give the floor to you. Thank you.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. This is my great pleasure to be invited to give some points on our experience from the participation in the institutional evaluation program of the European University Association. Actually, I would like to say a couple of words about why we decided to participate in the program. Actually, I have my first experience with the program happened in 2004 already. So it's almost 20 years ago, where I was responsible for organization of all the coordination of the visit of the evaluation team. And I think that even at that time, I considered important that this opportunity is about getting an independent feedback on how the university functions. I think that it's also important to say that for us it's important to have a sort of regularity of these events, because there are, apart from this basic evaluation, also some follow-up progress evaluations. And this also gives an opportunity to see how what is continuous development of these developments in the university. It also gives an opportunity to think about ourselves and to give answers for these quite simple but sometimes very difficult questions, to say, if we want to be honest and frank, what the institution is trying to do, how the institution is trying to do the things, and how does the institution know that it works, and how does the institution change in order to improve. In the last but not least, I would like to say that this is also an opportunity to compare the concept of development of the university with the trends in a European higher education area, which can be also demonstrated by the conceptual materials which are issued by either European University Association or by our EU institutions. And maybe it's also good to say a couple of words about what was the key outcome for us from the evaluations. First of all, I always tried to convince and stress in the university what we should expect from this evaluation, that it is not about that some, in quotation marks, clever people from Europe come to say what we are doing wrong or we are doing good. I think that this is, first of all, about the opportunity to hear some experience from really experienced experts who came to help us to understand some strategic issues and give us some independent view on our internal culture. And one of the outcomes which I appreciate a lot, it's also an independent view on harmony between communications which goes from the university level management and from the faculty or institute levels up to the university. And what I appreciated a lot is just this harmony between these communication is an indicator how communication in the university works. Finally, I would also like to say a couple of words on how we deal with the recommendations which we get from the institutional review program. First of all, I think that we consider this recommendation as a serious inputs for discussions, internal discussions, and some reference. On one side, it's important to say that the university is a very complex body. Management of the university is really about many compromises, and we need some reference points. And the EUA and just documents which are available and issued by the university, European University Association are important hints for saying, look, these are the trends and we have option. Either we can follow them, we can take something what is important for us, or we simply ignore them. And I think that this is a challenge for our development and challenge for being compatible within the European higher education area. What is also important is to know that management of the university must know what it wants, because without that, no evaluation can help. That is why many of these recommendations is based on communication with the evaluation team, that we just get some agreement on that these are the points which we want to use for inputs for the next development and for the governance of the institutions. So that is why I must say that our institution went already through 4 institutional evaluation processes in the past, and we plan to continue in this process also in future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ladislav. Very interesting. Now we are going to listen to my colleague here at the European University Association. Tanya Durta is the administrative officer, and she's the person you will be in touch the most if you undergo an IEP evaluation. She's going to tell us more about the practicalities of the process. So Tanya, the floor is yours.
I'm Tanya, so I'm from the IEP Secretariat, and I will be taking you over some practicalities of the application and evaluation process. And it might be easier once I can show you the 7 steps that would be good to remember. So on my next slide, and apologies for the hiccups we had. Okay, we will see this in a bit of detail, but we will be considering in 7 steps the main tasks that the university and the IEP Secretariat have, and we give you a generic timeline, although of course we are ready available to tailor-made depending on each institution and the considerations that you might want to consider. So if we go to my first step, which is the next slide, registration, that is actually happening at the moment, and the registrations are open until the 2nd of July. And the step is basically to fill a form that you will be sending to us with some basic information. The next step are the preliminary arrangements, and that usually happens between July and September. From the institutional point of view, it's signing the contract, paying the fees that needs to happen before the end of September, suggest dates for the online meetings and the site visit we will do. And from the IEP side, we make sure that we establish an evaluation team for each one of the institutions that are participating. The next step would be the self-evaluation report that Greg mentioned some time ago. And that's basically a process that might take about 3 months that every institution will take to self-assess themselves and provide us, in a way, some information prior to the online meetings. So the next step is actually the online meetings and the site visits. Online meetings take a couple of days, more or less full days, and that's the evaluation team and the university meeting online to find out more information and establish a relationship. And then during the site visit, that's usually about 4 days, the evaluation team travels to the place where the institution is. And again, the communication continues in terms of getting information. And at the end of the site visit, we can go to the next step. We have the evaluation report, which is a report written by the evaluation team. An oral report is already presented on the last day of the visit, and then a proper written report is later on written with some constructive feedback based on what the team and the university talked about during the meetings and the online and the visit. The next step is a follow-up video conference, and that usually happens about 3 months after the visit has taken place. And you can see in this case, the slides mention the specific years for the people who will be signing up until July this year. The follow-up video conference is just an informal half an hour, 1 hour meeting between the IEP Secretariat, my colleague Cecilia, and the institution to see how maybe some of the suggestions have already been or are being put in place. And then the final step is a progress report that is written by the institution, and that happens about 1 year after the final report had been presented, and is basically to see together where the university is in relation to the evaluation that happened, the suggestions that were made, and how they have been able to apply some of those suggestions. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Tanya. I think you explained very well how the program works. So finally, I have a pleasure to introduce the last speaker of today, who is my boss, Maria Kelo, here, the director of the Institutional Development Unit at EUA, European University Association. And she will sort of wrap up what has been said by the others, but also stress some of the main characteristics of IEP.
So thank you for your patience with us. I didn't see very many questions in the questions and answers, so please keep those coming if you want, so we still in the last minutes can address those. So what you've heard in this today's kind of complicated but hopefully interesting nevertheless webinar in the 45-50 minutes we've had, you've heard a lot of details and a lot of experiences, but then do not worry to hold all of that in your mind. We have our guidelines which detailed every step, every action, every question that has to be addressed in the self-evaluation and how the process works in general. And of course, there are the three of us. You've seen Cecilia, Tanya, and myself, and we are always available for any questions you might have. I would also like to underline that we have the application deadline on the 2nd of July. And we have usually this kind of application period once a year because it just enables us to organize the work better in this way. But should you have a problem and not being able to submit your application, if you are interested in that, but on the 2nd or by the 2nd of July, just get in contact with us and we see how to help you out. So just a little wrap up of kind of what I think are the key points. I come from ENQA. I don't know if some of you know, it's the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. I was the director of ENQA for 10 years before joining EUA a bit more than a year and a few months ago. So I've seen very many quality assurance agencies and how they work and what do they give to the institutions. And many of them, I would say all of them, do in their context an excellent job. But IEP, what's special about IEP? I think from my point of view, who has not worked for IEP for long, I think it is really a truly European quality assurance process. There's always a totally international panel that comes from not the country where the institution is located. So it really gives a kind of a very wide and diverse perspective. And this also helps because having these different perspectives means that the panel doesn't come with a fixed idea of what a university should do and how it should look like. And thereby we can really tailor the process, very much focusing on what is really key and the most important thing for the institution that is being reviewed. At the same time, while it is largely adaptable and we really, start with the institution's priorities, we of course also through this process look at the compliance of the processes that are in place in the institution with the European standards and guidelines, the ESG. So IEP is registered in the European Quality Assurance Register, ECAR. So our evaluation is let's say, a quality assured quality assurance process in that sense. So it's both the compliance, but then with a very strong focus on enhancement and the strategic management and support. And that's kind of what we see as the real peer-to-peer support, because our evaluators are rectors, vice-rectors, current or former in this position. And also, of course, we have a student member in each panel and the coordinator who is a quality assurance expert with a lot of experience with reviews. Another key point of the IEP is this support orientation. But what I always see happen, and what is my strong opinion, and I've seen, and I think also Ladislav can testify to that, that's one of the recent processes we have, you get out of the process as much as you are willing to put into the process. So if an institution really gives importance to this process, they have a very good self-reflection beforehand, and oftentimes that's one of the most valuable parts of the whole process, is that it forces an institution to bring together internal and external stakeholders to discuss who they are, what they want, and where do they want to go next. So if an institution really does a serious job with the self-assessment and is open to the discussions with the review panel, then they can really get a lot out of it. If it's done as a tick box exercise, it doesn't really work, because that's not how IEP is built and that's not its purpose. So it takes a certain effort from the evaluated institution, but that's what is required to get the best out of it as well. There do not seem to be any questions anymore in the questions section, or so there was just one question about sharing of the slides, particularly the 7 steps developed by Tanya, and we will of course share that. And also a question about how to become an IEP reviewer, and the answer to this is that we make a call. And to be a reviewer, it's the vice-rectors, rectors, current or former, and then of course the coordinators who are the quality assurance experts. There is a question that is whether you need to be an EUA member to take part in IEP, and no, that's not necessary at all. So no, it's not necessary to be an EUA member to take part in the IEP program. That's open for any institution, and not only in Europe, but also outside of Europe. And we have done some of those evaluations as well. And who do you think should be a member of the evaluation group at the university? Let me ask if Greg or Luke want to respond on that. Who should be a member of the self-evaluation group?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. So actually, I mean, to be a member of the expert team, I mean, you need to be an IEP team member. So that's the way. But then after that, I mean, you can apply actually. I think it's every 2 years that, I mean, it's possible, I mean, to apply to that. But maybe, I mean, you will correct myself if I'm wrong. So, but I must say that's very interesting experience. So maybe Greg wants to add something.
Well, I think I may have misheard the question. I thought the question was who should be typically in the self-evaluation group
exactly, yes.
in the
Oh, I'm
university.
sorry.
Yes, correct.
It's okay. I think this is just a suggestion because the actual phraseology is in the guidelines, but I think it's important that it's chaired by someone with a bit of say in the university, at sort of perhaps a deputy rector or a rector designate level, that sort of level. It's got to include students, senior academics, but also academics at the chalk face. And if there are professional services staff who have an important input in the way the university is heading, then it'd be important to have them on board. And like any other group, you gain by having more members, but you lose if there are too many members. So you need maybe, say, around 8 or 9 who are dedicated to producing a self-evaluation report and have enough influence or authority in the university to get the input from all of the stakeholders, both internal and external. So without knowing the institution, it's very difficult to say, but that's the sort of team that a university tends to put together.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gregory. I saw another question about the IEP pool. Someone was asking if the list of our IEP pool members is available on the website. No, this is not the case. But when you apply for an evaluation, we prepare a team and then we send you their details, their names, and the CV. So it is ultimately up to the university to approve the team that we propose. So you will obviously know in advance who is evaluating your university, and you will have a say on that. We obviously try to create teams that are balanced in terms of gender, in terms of subject expertise, and of country where they are from. We do not choose anyone who is from your institution's country, but if possible, we choose one who, at least one person who can speak your language, even if our evaluations are in English, but that can always help if possible. But as I said, then institutions can view the members of their evaluation teams and decide on them in advance. I don't think there is any other question at the moment. So I think I will just thank all the speakers very much for being with us today and for putting up with our technical issues. We are very sorry about that, but I hope it was an enjoyable experience, and I hope for our attendees that they learned something about IEP. There is a lot of information available on our website, and we are always happy to answer all your questions. So thank you very much again for being with us, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.